In this video, I'm going to show you how you can schedule and track items through the production facility using the timesheet collection system. So firstly, let's look at an existing contract. If we look at the bill items, these are the items that were prepared in the quotation, and we can see they're the items as quoted along with their prices. Now, if I go to the production status, the system will replicate all of those, but to a unique code to allow us to amend and schedule as required. Now it's replicated the whole bill item. Some of these items we don't necessarily need to track through production, so I can hide these from the listing, so to make this listing a little more manageable. So we simply highlight the ones that we don't want to show on the list, and then go to our display options and say hide selected items. So that gives us a more manageable list. The items still exist in the bill items for the quotation, obviously. So now we can look at these items and then start to schedule the dates in and look at the schedule hours. So if I was to look at the reception desk, it will populate the various operations with the schedule hours taken from the estimate. If I double click on that, we can see they're the hours from the estimate, and it's replicated them there for this item in production. And I have the facility here to amend this as required. So I could say rather than 8 hours, we wanted 7 hours. Machining, rather than 6, we wanted 5.5. And so we can amend the hours as required. It won't change the estimated hours. If we want to globally apply a percentage to that, just to decrease it by a certain amount of hours, I can click the adjust schedule hours by percentage, and then just say what's the percentage we want to reduce it by, and then that will be applied to all of those areas. We've then got other areas where we can load in and view the drawings attached to this item, and we could make a note of the specific drawing that we want to track with this item. We've then got the facility to say a scheduled start date for the overall operations. So we'll say we want this to start, say, on the 2nd, and the overall completion date, the 10th. We've there got an option that we can say when the drawings were approved. And then I can start to schedule in the times that I want these operations to happen. So we might say we want setting out is scheduled to start on the 2nd and to complete on the 3rd. Machining starting on the 3rd, completing on the 4th, and so on. So we just go through and schedule the various items. Site fixing is shown on here. Now, obviously, we're not tracking site fixing through production, so that won't be scheduled through, but it's still making a note so we can see what hours have been allowed for that. You've also got an area for production notes where you can type your own comments and notes here as the item progresses through production. So if we save and complete that, you can see now that it's starting to populate this with our start date for setting out and our scheduled end date. Likewise for machining, the schedule hours have been reduced to suit what I have entered in there, and we've also got details of our drawings approved, and the overall start and completion date. The other thing I want to look at before we move on is in the estimate we price for 3 door and frames. Now it might be during production, it could be a phased production, so we might not be producing all 3 at once. So I can split those into a required production run simply by highlighting it and say split selected items. Let's say we will do a batch of 2 and 1. So I simply split that, and it will then reduce that to 2 and reduce the suggested hours, and then create a new item for the one I've split. But also indicate that I've done that. So it's telling me this item was split by production and the item created from the split by production. If I look at the bill items, you can still see that it's still recorded as 3 within there. But with production, we've split it into the 2, and we can then schedule these in. It will still report, as I report my hours, actual hours against this batch of 2 and against this batch of 1, they will all report back to the quotations batch of 3. So we've still got the overall comparison from estimated to actual, but we've also got the comparison from the production run as well. So to see these items tracking through, I'm going to use the timesheet system. So I'm running a separate module on the shop floor that's tracking all the times from the lads. And then if I just bring this over, I'm going to be using the operation cards. Connor Thatcher here, you can see that he can do machining, he can do edge banding, bench labour, veneering. He simply scans the relevant operation that he's doing, so the system knows that it's him and the operation that he's doing, and then he will scan the code of the item that he is working on. So in this case, it's the reception desk. We can also print the control sheet for that reception desk, so it will follow this item through the production process. So each area can see the hours that they are allowed. Once each area has completed it, they will scan the relevant operation, and they will scan that department completion code, which will tell the tracking system that that item has now been classed as completed by that department. So simply to start scanning, so if we start to scan the setting out for a particular item, the operative scans their code. So the system now knows that Barry Jones is working on that. It then scans the relevant item that he's working on, and the clock is now ticking on that item. So if I move that out of the way and I refresh the tracking, you'll now see that that item I've scanned is now got a status in setting out on the 31st. It won't show any actual times until the setter out moves on to scanning a different item. So if I scan same operative, and I scan a different item, scan the same item, as you can see, I've scanned the same item, but now it's actually got an hourage against that item. If I scan a different item again, refresh the tracking, you'll see that now this item is tracked at setting out at the beginning, and the hours have been added, or seconds in this case, to this particular item. So what I'm now going to do is track this item through using our employee codes. So if we move this item onto machining, so Andrew Mitchell is going to start machining this. Refresh the tracking. See now that it's gone to machining. We can have different operatives working on the same item. The times will all be collated. If I scan, let's say Connor for machining as well, for the same item. So the clock's now ticking for him as well. Now, when either of those move on to a different item, the system will be able to add in the times that they have spent so far on that particular item. So I'll move them both onto a different item. And you can now see that this item's got the machining status. And now we can see that so far we've got 1 minute and 23 seconds booked to this particular item. And the system will actually work out a balance of time remaining for that. And then each department, as it gets the job and scans it, the times will start to be recorded against each area. So if we now move this into the bench labour, but prior to doing that, let's say that all of the machining is now complete for a particular item. The employee simply clicks his ID and the operation that it's complete. And then he scans the code for the item. And refresh the tracking. You'll then now see that the machining has been completed for that particular item. So it can then move on to the other areas. So we then put that through to bench. And then we'll move on to another item so we can see a time recorded against that. Refresh. You can now see that it's gone to bench and we're starting to track the times against that. So we can double click on that to view that in more detail from there. So that will then start to track that item through. If I look at the bill item from the estimating point of view, we can also view the hours from there simply by double clicking on the item. And that will show the actual hours against the estimated hours to date. So that is looking at tracking the item through the contract part of the tracking, but we can also view all our contracts together. If we go back to our dashboard and go to departments, production and contracts, items in production, the system will display every single item that's going through production, regardless of contract. Then we have the facility to reduce that list to a particular contract, or we could reduce that list to a particular operation. So if I just wanted to see only the machining items from there, we can just click machining and that list is reduced just to show machining items. Similarly, if I just wanted to see anything that had edge banding, there's nothing with edge banding, veneering, CNC. So you can refine that list from there, or we can just refresh the whole list. And that's a very brief overview of the production tracking using the timesheet system.